Hey
Fear,
everyone.
legacy.
Oh,
That's what we're going to be talking about today. Who are we underneath? It's what we do that defines. We're talking Batman again, folks. I'm not even going to beat around the bush. It has begun.
yeah.
It's beginning.
Yeah, we have the Dark Knight Trilogy, what we're digging into. This is part one of the
Yes, it
Dark Knight
is.
Trilogy because we're going to need 2 episodes to talk about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And and as you can tell, Gary's very excited. And I need to start remembering that Gary always has a good little intro
I really
himself. So I need to shut up.
not really. When the countdown's happening, I think, what should I say? And then so I've just started just whatever comes out.
Right,
Michael Scott. Once I start a sentence, I don't know where it's going. So
right.
so,
No, I'm
but
just saying I appreciate it.
so Efren, what would you say as we kick off this trilogy? Let's just throw it out there. Where does this trilogy stand on your list of favorite trilogies of all time?
Favorite trilogies of all time.
Mm-hmm.
For me, trilogies of all time, it stands at number 2.
Okay.
And that is because Lord of the Rings is my
Mm-hmm.
favorite trilogy of all time.
Yeah.
And so that is why this was hard. It was when this trilogy finished, like I really thought like, man, this is probably the best, probably the best. But then when I went back, honestly, over when COVID first started, and I had time, and so I
Yeah.
went back and rewatched both trilogies, and I was just kind of like, it's still Lord of the Rings. And for the mere fact, I think we had this conversation before, but for the mere fact that, to me, what makes it Lord of the Rings the best trilogy is because with each movie, that movie got better and enhanced the trilogy. With the Dark Knight trilogy, I felt like Batman Begins was great. Dark Knight, absolutely phenomenal masterpiece. And Dark Knight Rises, really, really good, but it just wasn't as good as the Dark Knight. And so that is why it would be in that number 2 spot for me.
Where Lord of the Rings builds on each movie. This one, a little bit. Yeah, I get it. That just as I have to say, it's my favorite, just as a Batman fan. But the Lord of the Rings, I mean, that's literally the. I think you got Lord of the Rings, this trilogy, the original Star Wars. Those are the big 3 trilogies people talk about.
Yep.
And I'll throw Indiana Jones, the original 3, in there. Just me personally, but
Yeah.
obviously probably below those because I mean, but this belongs in the conversation. I think with Lord of the Rings and Star Wars.
Yes.
Some people's heads are probably hearing that and they're probably exploding, especially Star Wars geeks out there.
Yeah.
But
But here's the thing with Star Wars, it's no longer a trilogy.
it's not. It's whatever.
There's 9 films now. Like you can't
Yeah.
call it a trilogy, which is the same reason why, like for me, as much as I love the Toy Story movies, like I would probably have, if they didn't make the mistake of Toy Story 4, I would probably have the Toy Story trilogy right up here in this conversation.
Yeah.
But since they made a 4th
That's
one
fair.
and screwed it up, it's no longer a
Yeah.
trilogy. So that's
Well, that
why.
being the case, Indiana Jones can't be in the conversation either,
Well,
unfortunately.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, we're talking good things today.
Yes, we are.
And Batman Begins, 2005.
Man.
I don't know if we've talked much about it on this show, but we've talked personally about where we were in life when this movie came out. I was not ready for it. I kind of rolled my eyes at it. What about you?
Yeah.
When it was announced.
Yeah, when it was announced, I honestly didn't care whatsoever, because again, I still had the sour taste in my mouth from Batman and Robin, and it was just something that I was just like, I don't care, I don't care at all, and so when that came out, I didn't see it. I didn't go see it on opening weekend. I didn't care at all. It was probably a good 2 weeks. If not maybe 3, I don't know. It was a while. It was at least 2 weeks before I went and saw it because a friend of mine, my best friend in high school, he said he's a huge Batman fan. And he was like, dude, I went and saw it. And he's a film guy. He works, in the industry and stuff right now, but he's just like you have to see it, man. It's so good. It is so phenomenal. And at this time, I didn't know who Christopher Nolan was. Even though I've seen some of his movies, I didn't know who he was. So even the director didn't mean anything to me. But he's like, you have to go. So I go and I watch it. And as I'm watching it unfold, I'm just like, this is great. This is really, really, really good. And then I remember thinking at one point, he still can't turn his neck, but this is really, really good. Which, by the way, they addressed that in the second one, which made the second even better for me.
Well, he had to be able to back out of his driveway.
Yes.
You can't fight crime if you can't back up the Batmobile, the tumbler, whatever you call it. I was very similar. I was hurt by Batman and Robin as I got older, and people were, laughing at me for being a Batman fan. Imagine that. And just because that was the last thing we got. And then when this was announced, I was just like, kind of rolled my eyes because I was like, it's not Michael Keaton. They're trying it again. I didn't know who Christian Bale was. I didn't know who Christopher Nolan was. The only person I knew in this movie was Liam Neeson and Katie Holmes. And I was like, oh, the Tom Cruise Scientology lady and the guy. So this is before Taken. So Liam Neeson was, he's the Schindler's List guy. But so it was just kind of like, all right, whatever. So I didn't go see it for a long time. And it's weird to say that because now anything with Batman on it, I'm one of the first people there. Us both, And so, but went and saw it, didn't have very high expectations. But halfway through, I realized, I kind of realized what they're trying to do. This is not only an origin story, but it is a realistic take on this character. And not realizing while in the theater, I was like, this is what the last two movies were missing. This realism, this darkness, this character study of Bruce Wayne. And the moment he pulls Falcone out of that limo and says, I'm Batman, that's why I was like, Christian Bale's on the radar. How about that? Yeah. And yeah, so I remember we went to lunch afterward and I sat there and I was just like amazed at what I just saw. And I was excited for Batman for the first time since second round of second grade. You heard me right? So yeah.
Yeah, I know. And that's like, for me, like I was so excited. I went out and bought the PS2 game that came with it. The game wasn't very good, but the movie was fantastic. And yeah, like you, like it brought excitement back to Batman and made Batman real. Because at this time too, like we also had like animated series stuff was done. Batman Beyond was done. They had these other more kid friendly shows. There was one show called The Batman that was okay.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah,
they had some weird stuff in it. So like Batman really wasn't on the up, and this comes out, and even like didn't know who Christopher Nolan was, didn't know who Christian Bale was. Like it just seemed at the time like a bunch of like nobodies, right? And we get this phenomenal, realistic, grounded, as best as you can ground Batman movie that comes out. And then, like you said, like the character study of Bruce Wayne, like what his head's like, and the fact the way they did the flashback scenes and kind of mixed in with where he's currently at, I thought was brilliant to see where he came from. Because you always heard about Batman, he has all these great martial arts, he's a great detective, but you got to see how he developed those skills a little bit.
Yeah, like and why he is that. Yeah,
and that's what I loved about it, because like Batman Begins, it was like, okay, so Batman's going to start. I thought maybe this would have been a copy of the Michael Keaton, and no, like it literally showed you how he became Batman, which is exactly what it needed to be if you're going to reboot Batman.
Yeah. And in my opinion, it's the perfect origin story, because sometimes origin stories can be slow and boring. And I don't find and this might be me being a fanboy, but I don't find one boring moment in this entire trilogy. And in the first one, it kicks off. One of my favorite lines is when, he gets himself locked up to fight criminals in prison, and they're dragging him away. And I'm sure if you're watching this, I hope you've seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, go watch it, come back. What does he say? He's dragging him away from these prisons. And he's like, what are you taking me away for? It's like protection. I don't need protection from them. Such a great Bruce Wayne moment. Such a great Batman moment. But yeah, that character, that deep dive. And if there was a guy, let's just say, if there was a guy who was going to say, you know what, I'm going to dress up as a bat and use my resources and defend my city, like in real life in our time, if somebody did that, I think it would look like this movie, especially Batman Begins. Because it just all makes sense. Like he's using tech from Wayne Enterprise. He's got Lucius Fox. Alfred is very realistic. Michael Caine, and it's just that realism just, brings it to life, I guess. I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no, and it does. And kudos to like Christopher Nolan, who's always trying to like elevate his films, right? Like he's never been a guy to just make a dumb fun movie, right? Like he's made like fun movies, but there's always a level of intellect that comes along with it, and he has to have some kind of realism. He has to take it seriously because he's really focused on making art, and that was something that I thought was really helped, especially this first Batman movie. Is like he had to take it seriously, and he had to take the character seriously, and he had to take what was happening seriously. I mean, if you look at these movies realistically, there's not a whole lot of like Batman action in this movie.
No.
Or any of these movies, which I thought was actually kind of genius because if you remember the animated series, yes, you get a lot of Batman, but you had equal time Bruce Wayne being a detective and figuring stuff out. So we got to spend more time with him trying to figure stuff out before he had his Batman fights. You know, outside of like an opening scene, like in Dark Knight, you know, where he's trying to
wear hockey pads.
Yeah, exactly. That whole scene with Scarecrow and stuff like.
Folks, I promise I won't do that too much.
Yeah. So I mean, you had that, and that's what was neat, especially when you had like a serious but kind of weird stuff with Tim Burton, and then completely campy for Schumacher, and then now we have this. Is like, no, we're gonna take this seriously.
Yeah.
And then the success of Batman Begins. Obviously, we had the Dark Knight. I mean, to me, I can't remember if Nolan had a trilogy planned or not, but it seemed like he did. With the way this played out. I think with The Dark Knight Rises, we'll talk a little bit later, because of the unfortunate death of Heath Ledger, I think it changed what The Dark Knight Rises was going to be. I think you see a little bit of that. But overall, I mean, it seemed that this man had a plan, and he was like, someone like this. Well, here's what I loved about the overarching of all three, is that he can't plan to be Batman forever.
Yeah.
You know, unlike the movie. Like, you can't. I mean, even, you know, Harvey Dent says that he doesn't want to do this forever. How could he? Like, he's looking for someone to pass the mantle on. And the fact that was even part of the psyche of this whole thing of, like, this isn't this Bruce Wayne isn't going to be Batman forever. Like, it has to end. And I think that helped it too.
The last line of Batman Begins, one of the last lines of Batman Begins, is Rachel telling Bruce Wayne, if there's ever a day you don't need Batman, Gotham doesn't need Batman, I'll be there. You know, and he literally, it's really it's that conflict that we talked about, Mask of the Phantasm, him trying to be Bruce Wayne, him trying to be Batman, you know. And the other thing with this movie is, and we got to talk about, is all these movies, is Gotham City looks like a real city. You know, all the colors and the rave and the acid trip that is Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are gone. You know, he filmed this on location in many, you know, I think Pittsburgh, Detroit, all these different places.
I think it was in Chicago.
Chicago was Dark Knight. Yeah. Pittsburgh is famous for the Dark Knight Rises. We'll talk about that. You know, Heinz Ward running for his life.
Yes.
but yeah, so just Christopher Nolan, him and his brother, I think Jonathan Nolan gets credit too. He helped write these movies with him. He took the Batman story and said, it's been turned way up for forever. Let's turn it down a notch, even to the fact, and here's what just came to mind. If you think about this movie, let's go back to 2005. Journey back with us. Sorry. But this movie, there's no stars cast in this movie. Like, that's where it made it so different, even with the 1989 Batman.
Well,
Jack Nicholson.
Well, the only one was Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman, yes.
That's the only one.
Yeah, but there's not like that big villain cast where it's like Nicholson's playing the Joker, Jim Carrey's the Riddler. This was like Christian Bale as Batman. Like, as a kid, I didn't know who he was, but people knew him at the time. I looked at, he had done American Psycho, Equilibrium, and The Machinist. Movies that weren't exactly blockbusters. They were more like cult fan favorites, you know?
Right.
So it just, in everything, he just turned it down a notch, you know, and arguably the two biggest stars in this movie are Morgan Freeman and Liam Neeson. And you know, you got Michael Caine and Katie Holmes, but yeah, so I just always appreciate that, you know, looking back, you know, at the time I was like, who the heck's playing Batman? What, man, whatever.
Right. Yeah. And I guess you're right. Like, and I guess you're right. Like Katie Holmes too. You know, I guess I remember at the time she was in a bunch of different stuff and people kind of knew who she was. But the thing is, neither one of them were cast in a really important role. They're both supporting roles, which also is a little flip of the script there.
Yeah.
They had the kind of bigger names in supporting roles, but your main roles were people that no one really knew who they were, unless you just knew everything about film and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which just makes it better for them to work with. But that's the genius of Nolan in hindsight, right? But the genius of Nolan is that he really does. He's like, I am looking for a certain kind of actor or actress for the specific kind of role. Maybe he already has that role in mind. I mean, people talk about how a lot of times when someone writes a screenplay, they already have an actor in mind when they're writing it. So if that's the case, maybe they were that far thinking and they already had that in mind. It kind of seems like they did because it just worked. Everything worked. Like I remember when Christian Bale first came on the scene as Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins, I just kind of thought like, this guy's Batman? Like to me, it just kind of felt weird. But as it went on, I saw the story develop. I saw what they were doing. I was like, oh yeah, I can totally see this guy as Batman. And then, like you said, he gets his wonderful toys. Yeah. And you start to see like, oh, okay. And that's what I did appreciate is, he wasn't like a super jacked person. Not like we've had that live action super jacked person as Batman anyways. But the fact that they made him rely on his intelligence and his gadgets and his detective skills to succeed as Batman, that I thought was really good, because that's probably the more interesting part of Batman than just having the martial arts side where he punches everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Batmobile is practical. It's a war machine. It's a, it's like a tank. It's not a car with bats logos in the tires. It's realistic, and it just brings it in. I just want to take a step back. I kind of feel we're remiss not mentioning Gary Oldman, and when we're talking about the cast, Gordon and Cillian Murphy as Jonathan Crane, Scarecrow. That's another thing. Scarecrow, Ra's al Ghul, in the normal moviegoers, they're not well-known Batman villains. He even toned it down there, So, which,
Yeah, and even though me being a comic nerd, I would love to have seen him in like a full like Scarecrow outfit. Yeah. But that's the thing though, is the fact that the way they did it made it more realistic. Because yes, his Scarecrow mask was like scary and was kind of like, why is he wearing that? But then you notice on the inside he has a filter so the fear gas doesn't affect him. Yeah. And then he could freak people out in the moment at the same time. It was like, okay, that's kind of genius.
Whenever
they handle that.
Whenever I'm watching this movie, it never fails. I always start off watching it, and I'm the only one there. Megan usually joins me because she loves these movies too. But my kids do not come into the room unless the Scarecrow is on the screen doing his Scarecrow stuff or whatever he says. And it's like, I mean, the other day, last time I watched it, Carter and Lainey came walking in the room when he did it to Falcone, and it was just like,
oh yeah. And they got freaked out.
Yeah, I want my kids to sleep for the next few years, so I had to turn it off, Right. But yeah, so yeah, this movie was a pleasant surprise, and thankfully, we got it.
Yes, and I titled this thing that our episode today, like the Dark Knight Trilogy. I know on the graphics that's part 1, but like underneath I have it titled like a new direction, I think is what it was, or a new standard. That's what I did.
Yeah,
a new standard. And I really felt that's what happened here with Batman Begins. Is it set a new standard. Now, like maybe you have the numbers there for us, Gary, but I don't remember how much this thing actually made. How much was it?
All right. So it was released, going to the IMDb machine, June 15th, 2005. Let's see. Budget of $150 million. Opening weekend, $48 million. Gross U.S. $206 million. So there we go.
So there we go. So okay, that's what I suspected, but I wasn't sure. Was that this thing actually wasn't a massive hit? Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I remember, I remember not a lot of buzz. I remember again a lot of people because so many people were burned out. Not burned out, but skeptical. That's the better word. Yeah. Because of what happened. So it really wasn't that huge a hit. But then as people saw it and they started talking about it, then more people saw it later. But then what was great about it was I remember going into The Dark Knight, buzz was
holy cow,
insane.
To this day, the most excited I've ever been for a movie. The Dark Knight, to this day. Yeah, I mean it was everywhere. Batman buzz. But this was, I like to compare Batman Begins to the first Iron Man because very similar, that had, Robert Downey Jr. arguably is more well known than Christian Bale. However, there wasn't a ton of buzz around the first Iron Man. Marvel wasn't what it is now. But as it came out, I remember people telling me, you got to go see this movie. I was like, really? Iron Man? And then you see that first trailer and it's like, okay. And then boom, we got the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this movie was very similar, I think. It was like Batman, okay, again. And wait, it's actually really, really good. What?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, Iron Man, same thing. That same thing happened to me. I had no idea who Robert Downey Jr. was. My dad did, because he remembered him from back in the day. So older generations, but our generation didn't really know who he was. And
he was the guy from Weird Science. That's what I knew him from.
Oh, there you go. And it's just so it's just like, I had no idea who he was and stuff. But the same thing, I didn't go see it, because I remember when Iron Man came out, and they're making this Iron Man movie. I'm like, okay, it looks kind of cool, but I remember thinking, like, Iron Man's such a B character. Like, yeah, he has some cool stuff, and he teams up with the Avengers, but like, I don't know if I want to see a movie with just him. Like, I'm over here like, how about you fix Spider-Man? I mean, that's kind of where I was. Yeah. And do another Hulk movie, like a good one, not the one we got, before Incredible Hulk came out. And and so it was the same thing. And
Eric Bana Hulk.
Oof. Yeah, that one. Oof. And then and I had friends. You got to see it, man. You got to see it. You love Marvel. You got to see it. And then boom, and then here we are, right? Yeah. And so much how Robert Downey Jr. is the godfather, if you will, of MCU. Like, I feel like anything Batman from here on out, Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale are the godfathers of what we have, of why Batman. I mean, even look at Battington. Look at what they're doing, trying to be realistic with Riddler, trying to have it really grounded and in a sense that this is happening in the real world. We don't get that without this.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah. So, not at all. Like I said, it's that realistic take, and it's what makes it so great, because it loses that campiness, it loses that color. Because and here's the thing, we've talked about this before. The story of Bruce Wayne is not a good story. Like, it's not a feel good story. Yeah, it's a tragedy. It's Shakespeare, if you will. I'm not trying to sound smarter than I really am, but it's a guy whose parents were murdered right in front of him, like in front of him, and it changes his entire life, obviously, in the story of what he decides to do with that happening, and this sets it up. This whole trilogy is just that tale of this man and his city trying to pick up the mantle where his dad left off. Because that's another thing with Batman Begins, the legacy of his father. He's struggling with that because his dad was. That city completely changes when his parents are killed.
Yep. Yeah, because Wayne Enterprises, Thomas Wayne, they were everywhere, right? And that's what it was. And you do see him go from like kid who's struggling, lost his parents, dealing with that grief, and then that grief turns into anger, where he wants to try to kill the guy who's in court, and then of course he gets yelled at by Rachel. By Rachel, yeah, he gets yelled at by her, and just like, how could you do this? I'm ashamed. So he has that anger. Then he runs away. Like, you do see all the different stages of grief with Bruce Wayne dealing with this for his entire life, and then you have him come to the conclusion of, I need to become fear. I need to, and he's like that line of, why bats, sir? Because I fear bats, and I want my enemies to share my dread. Like, honestly, like, even that line is very tragic. That's how he's thinking. Yeah. And they just keep playing on that for the entire trilogy, but you really get that good setup in this movie where they're just showing you, like, this, where we're going isn't good. Like, like, even though we love Batman, we love the character, I felt like the movie was telling us it's not good that a man is actually doing this. Oh no, like, the man is crazy, and we dive into that in The Dark Knight. But it's like, he's crazy. The fact that he's crazy, the fact that he has to do it because the world is so broken, the city is so messed up, and it's just and everything just flows really well throughout this movie and that trilogy, this trilogy, and. And like I said, I remember sitting so there was a restaurant in Wilmington. It's just a different restaurant, but it was called Rockola Cafe. Do you remember Rockola Cafes? Mm-mm. They are now, Kickback Jacks is now Rockola Cafes. Oh, okay. Yeah. Or I said that backwards. We went there after seeing this movie. I remember sitting there with my brother and just thinking, did I like that more than the Michael Keaton Batman movies? And just feeling so conflicted and so somewhat ashamed, because I felt like if I liked this more, I was dishonoring my childhood,
and disrespecting Sir Michael Keaton, who is my favorite actor, and
Right.
but it's okay because you don't have to choose because they're so different.
Yeah.
you
And
know?
even then, you can still appreciate because even though we talked about last week, we needed Batman and Robin to get Nolan. We still also needed Michael Keaton Batman to get Nolan because
Yeah.
to know that Batman can be taken seriously.
Mhm.
Because we had Adam West that was campy. They took it more serious, but it still had its weird campiness. And then, of course, like we said, it got campy again. And it's like, is this what Batman has to be? But the fact that we had that standard already with Batman and Batman Returns, that no, you can take this seriously, then we get the Nolan. So like it really, like when you look at it, it all kind of plays together that leads up to this greatness that we get in Batman Begins and following.
Yep.
And that's what, and that's what needed to happen. And then so with Batman Begins, you get this groundwork that's set up. And then there was enough, I know this sounds weird when I say about Batman, but it felt like to me, there was enough of a cult following for Batman Begins that when the next one was announced that it was coming out, that cult spread it everywhere. And then it became Batman pandemonium for the Dark Knight.
And in my opinion, as good as, I don't know if you want to get to this part yet, but I don't, we've talked so much about the movie already. But if the movie ends with him and Rachel talking at the mansion where he's talking about rebuild brick for brick, okay, yeah, that was a good movie. It's a pretty nice take on Batman. We'll see what they do with it next. But how they end this movie, is the perfect, and yes, I am saying it, the perfect way to set up your next movie, to set up, and I don't know for sure, but I think they had an idea. I think they wanted to see how much money this movie made to see if they're going to do a sequel and all that. But I think Christopher Nolan, in my opinion, put this in there to see, okay, what is the buzz going to be about?
I still think he had a plan, at least for a second.
Yes.
I think he at least had the plan for a second, but it was like, we got to test the waters.
Yeah.
Because listen, until the Dark Knight trilogy, Christopher Nolan didn't have free reign on WB stuff.
No.
Like he had to prove himself with Batman Begins, and which he did.
Think about what he's making movies that when you think about literally, like he's making movies that are pretty much backwards.
Yeah.
And Interstellar, an entire movie that is filmed in space pretty much, or whatever he did, he can do that because of these movies,
Yeah.
And we'll go see his movies because,
yeah,
he's an artist. And
I mean,
there we go. But when Batman flips over that Joker card, I'll look into it. Flies away. I mean, that the theater I was in, it erupted. I was just like, I'm in 10th grade, and I'm just like, holy cow! It was just like, that was the moment. It was like, man, okay.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where it was like legit. Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but I love these movies. I remember thinking, I cannot wait to see what they do with the Joker in this universe.
Right. Which I think is a good transition. But before we go to that, like I know I pulled up this picture here with Nolan, but there's another picture that I found, Gary, that I want to put up here because I just thought this does a good job with showing exactly how we feel. And then, oh man, I forgot which one it was. Was it this one? Oh no, that's the one we just had. Hold on a second. I will find it here in a second. There it is.
He's looking at Christopher Nolan like, do you feel in charge?
Yeah, do you feel like you're in charge? Okay. So it should be that one. There we go. So I just like this picture because it was like because we're talking about Christopher Nolan, it's like Batman came back to life because of this man. And Christopher Nolan and Batman are forever going to be, synonymous with each other. Like they will always be tied together. They will be a dynamic duo that goes down in history. The Batman character and Christopher Nolan, because just what he did with these movies is just phenomenal. And like with everything we just talked about. And so it is like, there's so much has to go into it. And knowing that his brother helped write it as well. Like, I mean, his brother deserves some credit. They probably should have put his brother up here too in this picture for credit for writing it. And yeah, he has free reign now because of what he did. And this is like that typical, like if you are faithful in little, you'll be entrusted with much. Right.
Yeah.
And and that's exactly what happened.
It's hard to think Batman is being little. Like,
I know.
It's not what it is now. It was done. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, he was little, which he shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
But then it's totally different.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, with that ending that they had, which which I truly liked. Let's see, is it this picture? Yeah. So that ending that I liked, like he had it, and I got this picture because obviously it shows like all the characters that we had. I love that Nolan didn't shy away from these characters.
Yeah.
Like I love that he looked at the Rogues Gallery. He's like, yeah, we can do that, and he didn't shy away because something like Scarecrow probably should have been weird. Probably shouldn't have worked. Bane probably shouldn't have worked. Two-Face, Roz, yeah, sure. Joker probably shouldn't have worked in this world that he built.
Yeah.
Right. Even Catwoman probably shouldn't have worked, but he made it work. And then so now we have these iconic characters like we see in this picture, that for a lot of people, this is now Catwoman, this is now Bane, this is now Two-Face, this is who they see when they think of these names, because it was just so. It was so well done, which I appreciate that he didn't shy away from. So with that ending in Batman Begins, where it's just like, here's a Joker, of course it's like, yes, they're going to do it. Like, because you got Scarecrow, right? And you got the gangsters, which, yeah, we know about. But, like, let's be real, it's not the Joker.
Not the Joker. Yeah.
And it's like, could you pull it off? Can we? And they did it. And it was great, which at this point, I guess, Gary, we might as well just switch over, to the Dark Knight. And I think, again, we said we had to do this in two parts. We got to talk about Dark Knight for half this time, but Dark Knight gets announced. Just the announcement. What was your hype level?
I was thrilled that they were going to continue this universe. And my hype level, and I will be honest, it dwindled when I saw the casting of Heath Ledger as the Joker.
And there it is.
Like many people. I remember sitting in class, and it was actually an Old Testament class that I was taking in high school. And we talked movies a lot in that class, and we were all going around the room like, Heath Ledger? And I was just like, the 10 Things I Hate About You guy, A Knight's Tale, I don't, he just did that cowboy movie, and I was just, I just don't see it. No. And
which I think that's what hurt him the most, because I remember watching him, like I ended up, for whatever reason, seeing A Knight's Tale, and what's the other, Four Feathers or something, whatever other one he was in, something like that. I don't know. But again, he was just known as a pretty boy, right?
Yeah.
And due to, friends that I was hanging out with is why I watched those movies, and I was so angry because I didn't want to watch them. And then once Brokeback Mountain came out with him in it, and then, of course, then it was announced after that he was going to be the Joker, that just hurt him completely for the excitement level.
Yeah, and he was very similar to – so everybody keeps talking about how Robert Pattinson is such a great actor. But I haven't seen the movies he's been great in because they're just on another level of stuff I just choose not to watch.
Right.
Heath Ledger was kind of like that as well. He had done the romantic comedies. I saw, okay, and I just didn't see the level of stuff. And honestly, what the performance he gives here, no one saw coming. I mean,
right.
And then he was also in The Patriot with Mel Gibson, played his son.
That's right. Yeah.
Pretty good in that movie.
But he didn't have a lot to do in that movie.
Didn't have a lot to do, right? Yeah. But my level of excitement was with that first trailer. And you hear his laugh, and I think he says, people will die, and laugh. And it's just like, when I heard that laugh, I was like, I'm not concerned.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned. And some of the first images, and I was counting the days. I could not wait for this movie. And I can't stress enough, to this day, it is the most excited I've ever been for a movie.
Yeah, I mean, there was, again, like exactly what you said. So many people went through that same thing. Hype, yes, the second one's coming. We can't wait. We know the Joker's in it because it was already teased. It gets announced, Heath Ledger's the Joker. We're all just like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, that guy, how is he going to pull it off? First images came out. I remember thinking, okay, it looks cool. I was like, the Joker, I'm glad they got the purple and all that. He looks cool. He looks a little scarier, which I appreciate because he is crazy. But it's like, I remember thinking, and then what was everyone else thinking? But can he do it as good as Jack Nicholson?
And that's exactly right. He was, it was Jack Nicholson was the Joker. And there were some people even saying he should have been recasted. I remember people saying that. I didn't think that. I was just like, no, we don't, because that Joker is like a whole nother universe, whole nother level. And when you see that image and you see, holy cow, his smile is carved into his face. Whoa, this is some twisted stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and like with you, when that first trailer came out, then it was like, okay, okay,
Yeah.
I can see this. I can get behind this.
Mm-hmm.
Once you kind of saw him a little bit, it was like, all right, I'm excited. Like let's go see this.
Yeah.
It looks like this is going to be good. Let's see. Maybe they just got a good shot, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But I was excited to see it. I remember it was hard to get tickets. I was living in Orlando at the time, so I was able to go to the legit IMAX in Orlando to see this movie, and it was
Bless you, sir.
it was the place was packed. Every show was sold out. It was so good. I remember me and my wife, me and Katie, like we went, and I went with my boss because apparently her father figure, she calls her dad, works for DC and has done work on Batman comics and different stuff. And so us three, we all went together to go watch The Dark Knight, and man, it was just so good. And it's of course because of all the IMAX scenes that were shot, we got to see that full screen, all was 5-6 stories tall screen, however tall it is. So good. Yes, I will make you jealous, sir, because when we go to Atlanta, I'm taking you to one, darn it.
Hey,
But
I
anyways,
need to go. One of my biggest movie regrets is not seeing this in IMAX. Tickets were so hard to get.
Yeah.
And I was working for Gander Mountain at the time, and I think I was taking summer classes at Carolina College of Biblical Studies. Shout out to y'all. So I was very busy, and tickets were so hard to get. I had to go see this on my day off. I think it was a Thursday at like 11 o'clock. And it was in a small movie theater in like a little strip mall, like one of those really small ones. And it was the only place we could find tickets. And I went with my stepdad at the time. We went and saw it, and just, I mean, I can't say enough just how it's a perfect movie. It is the standard that not only Batman movies, in my opinion, are compared to, but like when a comic book movie is really good, this is the bar people always compare it to. Is it The Dark Knight? Which isn't necessarily fair because like Marvel movies they're just so different. You know
they really are.
This is a heist movie. This is a crime. This is a gangster movie.
Yeah,
mixed in a comic book characters. But is from the moment it starts, the music, the score, the writing, it's a perfect movie.
Yeah. Oh, the opening scene alone.
Oh my gosh.
With the Joker and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The opening scene alone tells you everything you need to know about what you're about to watch for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
And
he's a psychopath. He
absolute
kills
psychopath.
his entire crew, and he doesn't care,
Yeah.
And and that first line, I believe, doesn't kill you, only makes you stranger. And he drives a school bus off.
Oh, and our theater erupted.
Yeah.
When he took that mask off and he's like, makes you stranger, and it was just like, oh, like, and that was the thing. That was a moment I knew everyone in the movie theater got on board with Heath Ledger as the Joker. Was that opening scene? Like you hear nothing. He just acts and does stuff, and you're just like, man, who is that guy? Like we literally didn't think it would have been the Joker. We're just like, this guy's not talking. And then he starts talking, and then it's like, wait, what? Yeah, and then he takes it off, and everyone's like, and the fact that he did that and gets on, we were just like, he's the Joker. Yeah. He's at that point. I don't know, but I just wonder if people at the time were already texting the new Joker goat is here or something like.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it was just And then for the rest of the movie,
about Joaquin Phoenix, great performance, but in my opinion, doesn't touch this performance. Yes. And I don't want to get on that tangent, but he had no Batman to go up against, and then and I remember being in the theater and just. As good. Oh, my dog's yelling. My wife's home. But I remember being in the theater just waiting for his next scene, because his performance was so good. And he's telling the stories about how he got the scars and the stuff he's doing and his mannerisms. It was captivating, and you were like legit, like not in like a horror movie, but this guy was terrifying.
Yes, because, he was.
And like he says in the movie, you have nothing to threaten me with. And what's the scariest enemy? Someone who does not care what happens to him.
Yep.
So it just
this
mixed with how they're trying to take down the mob with Harvey Dent and
and that's what was great is that what was funny is like no one knew how good of an actor of Heath Ledger was until this.
Yeah.
Right. Like until this moment. I mean, even if you look at these pictures, it's side by side. It does you can kind of tell his facial features, but like it doesn't even look like him.
No.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like you have Pretty Boy here, and then you got the Joker. Like, he truly transformed himself. And like you said, the mannerisms, everything that he did, the fact that he is unpredictable, he doesn't care. I mean, like what Alfred said, to find the villain in the story that he was talking about, to find that bad guy. And he was like, well, why steal the rubies? And he was like, some men just want to watch the world burn. There's no rhyme or reason. There's nothing like that. And it's just like the fact that this is what we get. And what made it even more terrifying is you have no idea motivations. You have no idea his background. I mean, like when he was in the holding cell, there's no fingerprints, no DNA,
All
no
clothes are
thing
custom.
clothes are custom. We got nothing but a bunch of eyes and lint.
Yeah.
And this
he's just
is
sitting
what
there.
drives me. Yeah, and this is what's driving me nuts, Gary, about current superhero movies. Here's what drives me nuts: is that they want to make all these villains have this sappy backstory that you can understand their motivations. And it worked for Thanos because it's not sappy, but like you understood like what he was, what his motivations were. But the fact that like they're trying to do this with every single villain annoys me, because I'm like, no, sometimes people are just crazy and evil. And it's like, you can do it well. And then what do I say? Look at the Joker.
Yeah.
From the Dark Knight. You still have no background. You can still have no history. You can have zero motivation, and you can still have a phenomenal villain that people will talk about for decades to come.
Yeah.
And why like Marvel or DC or anybody is trying to just always shove that same narrative of we have to understand, we have to feel for the villain. No, you don't.
You don't.
And the Dark Knight proved it. Sorry, there's my soapbox, but go ahead.
No, less is more. Less is more, and there's and to this day, this movie came out in 2008. People are speculating, okay, what was his backstory? And like people get to kind of make up what happened. And he even tells different backstories about how he got the scars, so what do you believe, And then some people think he was a soldier and he's just dealing with PTSD. That's a theory. Who knows? But it's just so captivating. And it's just, he was so good in this movie that when the Blu-ray and DVD came out, he was on the cover, not Batman.
Yeah.
It used to bother me a little bit but he's just so good. It's just like you go see the Dark Knight Blu-ray cover, it's just a picture of the Joker,
Yeah. I mean his poster of him standing in the middle of the street looking back, after he got out of the truck. I mean that shot is iconic. Like people understand that. And this is where like one has to give credit to Heath Ledger. Because the way he was able to make the Joker come to life in that aspect, because it is, again, what have we said before? A hero is only as good as its villain, right? So in the Batman Begins, Batman is good because of Ra's al Ghul. You needed someone like that, and that's why he was elevated. He was able to start, and you're like, I'm behind this now. And then the second one, you had to step it up, and Heath Ledger did. Heath Ledger was exactly as it says, the unstoppable force that meets the immovable object. It had to be that. If it wasn't that, and Heath Ledger was able to bring that to the Joker character in a different way that we hadn't seen before, but at the same time, like make us dread him and know that he's crazy because he's like laughing, ha, look at me, like all that stuff that he did, and it was just like, oh my goodness, and I saw an interview with was it Michael Jai White, whatever
I saw that with the Collider.
Yeah, with the Collider, and the fact that he would just talk, like that made me appreciate more that Heath Ledger was like would go through the scenes and do all that and be like, how was that? Can I get your opinion? He would ask people what they thought were. So the fact that he even allowed his cast mates, I guess
Gamble, is it?
Yeah, exactly. That he would bring them in. I thought was great, and the fact that like no one saw him completely until he came in to film that scene, the gangster scene, and that everyone's reaction was like legitimate fear. They were like, oh my goodness. Like they had no idea, which again, Heath Ledger, man, that was,
I just love that. It's just, I love that you think you can steal from us and just get away with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what he went through to prepare for this movie, he got a hotel room for a week or so, had a journal and wrote in the journal as the Joker, and he didn't do gross stuff like Jared Leto.
Right.
But he worked on perfecting this character, and he really, and people will say, and that's the other thing I remember about that interview that I appreciate, because the internet likes to talk. They like to think, the Joker character is what killed Heath Ledger. No, it's not. He got sick, and it was an accident. you know.
Yeah.
And they're in the co-stars in this movie, they back it up 100%. Like,
Yes.
that's not at all.
Yeah.
I hate when people say that. It's just, but anyway, so we're on Heath Ledger. Do you remember the moment you found out he had passed away?
I'm trying to remember where. No, I really don't remember like where I was or anything. I just remember feeling like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
Like not like anger, but just complete shock because the reports that were coming out were that he went crazy, got depressed because of this role, and then this is what he did. And then, of course, then there was the other crazy one was like, well, he was dating one of the Olsen twins. So there you go. And so like it wasn't like anything that I was like, surely not. Like like he did a role. I'm sure it wasn't that. And, so I just remember being more upset because like people were just saying stuff and no one really knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And then of course being sad because like, yo, like I just found out this dude's an actual good actor. I would have loved to seen him in more stuff. And I knew he had some other movie that came out after he had died that he already filmed. I can't remember what that was because I didn't watch it. But
in Wonder Emporium, I think is what it was called.
Right, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, where they got Johnny Depp and a couple other. Sorry, it's gonna drive me crazy if I don't know what it is. A couple other guys to fill in his role. I remember it was before The Dark Knight came out. So it was, I believe it was January, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Yeah, January 22nd is the day he died. And he was only 28. Jeez. And I remember I was at work. I worked at Stephen Barry's in Wilmington. It was before I moved to Fayetteville. And this girl came up and she was just like on her phone and she was just like, girl worked up front. She goes, yeah, Heath Ledger died. And I was like, what? And I just remember being just like really, and it was exactly the same thing. It was, oh, must have been overdose, must have been drugs, and it's sad how we just completely go to the
right,
but yeah, it was a kick in the stomach as a movie fan.
Yep. And when she's saying that he passed away before the movie came out, now I remember I was sitting in class. I was in a Monday night class. Okay. And when it came out, and then the whole class started talking about it before class started. And then when we had our break, because it was like a 3-hour class, we had our breaks and people were still talking about trying to figure stuff out. That's why I was upset because those were the stories I was hearing at the time.
Gotcha.
And then I remember the rumors of like, well, Christopher Nolan's going to go back and change the ending to where Joker dies so they can have that ending and stuff. And I was like, oh, I hope not. But, so then there's all those other rumors that were going on.
There were some things that he had finished the movie, but I remember there were a few things he didn't do. And I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe some voiceover stuff, because that was another thing. People said, well, he didn't finish the movie. He didn't finish the movie. They can do, but he clearly he did.
Yeah.
His last movie was The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So yeah, he played Tony.
Yeah. So I know we've harped a lot about the Joker and stuff, but that's what made this movie.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Christian Bale, of course, was great. Michael Caine, everybody else was great, absolutely great, and we can dig into some of that in the next.
Aaron
week.
Eckhart.
Yeah, Aaron Eckhart. We'll dig into that, but I'm glad we just focused a lot on this for this half of this because without Heath Ledger as the Joker, this movie does not work.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about before. I think a couple of days ago about how to do this episode was, let's talk about the hype for The Dark Knight and Heath Ledger and his performance alone, and then next week we can talk the actual movie and what makes it great, and and why it is the standard, why it is the bar.
Yeah, and I will say that it is after you watch the movie, after you watch the movie, everyone knew Heath Ledger would win an Oscar for it.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing that still bothers me, Gary, is that if he was still alive, would they still have given them the Oscar? Because at the time, I mean, they're still kind of like this. The Academy doesn't like giving any awards to superhero movies, if you will.
They don't. Unless it's like special effects or stuff like that.
Yeah. But like best actor or supporting actor or film, they would never do that. And I know he won it for this, but they did that as kind of like in his honor because he had passed away. And so for me, I'm just like, man, whether he lived or died, he deserved it for this role.
Oh, no doubt. So let's go to I got the Google machine up. Since you brought it up, let's see if he would have won. Okay. Hypothetically, there's another timeline where Heath Ledger doesn't pass away.
Right.
The nominees were Josh Brolin for Milk, Thanos himself, Michael Shannon for Revolutionary Road, Robert Downey Jr. for Tropic Thunder.
Huh.
I had no idea.
Wow.
He was the dude playing the dude.
Dude.
Anyway,
Disguised
Heath
as a
Ledger
dude.
for The Dark Knight, and Philip Seymour Hoffman for Doubt.
I mean, honestly, like, say he lived. Now, granted, I didn't see all those films.
Yeah, I didn't see Milk. I didn't see.
But I know the
Doubt.
caliber of what those actors are. So,
Yeah.
based on the caliber of those actors, me personally, what I saw Heath Ledger do, I think he's with the Joker. To me, surpasses anything Josh Brolin does, even as Thanos.
Oh yeah.
So based on what I know of
except
their
for
acting
K
chops.
in Men in Black 3, that was the best performance
Yeah,
of all
yeah.
time. You know my
Yeah.
name. Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. So he was good there. Philip Seymour Hoffman is amazing in everything that he does.
Yeah, but
And-
Philip Seymour Hoffman, I feel like I can't appreciate him as much because majority of the movies he made, he's also passed away.
Yeah.
I couldn't watch them.
Right.
Apparently The Master is a masterpiece, but I've looked at the content and I cannot even watch 2 seconds in that movie. But anyway,
Right.
I
But
don't
the
know.
stuff we were able to see him in, like to me, when I'm looking at that list, the stuff that's to me, Philip Seymour Hoffman would have been the one he had to beat.
Yeah.
To me, it's between them two. Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, I did watch that back in the day, but
Same.
but like
BC movie.
but like, I mean, for what he did in that movie, it like, I mean, he's getting flack for it now, right? I mean, but like,
Me and you people.
yeah, but like, he was nowhere near like a focus. I mean, yeah, he did a great job, but it wasn't like that. Doesn't touch this.
Yeah, these were the supporting characters.
Right, which is what Heath would have been. But to me, so just going on acting chops and then what I know of some of the films, like probably Philip Seymour Hoffman would be the only one because he does great in everything and he has a wide range. So that'd probably be the only one he would have to beat, in my opinion.
Yeah, I did see Revolutionary Road. Michael Shannon is pretty amazing in that, but I agree. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman would have been the one to give him a run for his money, but yeah, I mean, we'll never know. It's just speculation. And honestly, who knows? They gave the best picture to a movie about a lady falling in love with a fish a few years ago. So who knows what they're gonna do? You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
But anyway,
so and here I want to put this up here. Michael saying, Dark Knight in the IMAX was the best movie experience since Lord of the Rings, which there you go, Lord of the Rings being brought up again.
Yeah.
And but talking about that movie experience, man, there's nothing like IMAX. Gary, I have got to get you to a real IMAX. You have got to know what it's like. But yeah, Dark Knight in IMAX, if you saw it, so good. So
I was hoping they would have. There was talk of it being re-released for the 10th anniversary in 2018, but I don't think it did.
Oh man.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Probably.
2028.
Yeah, I don't think they did, but that would have been worth a drive to Atlanta, our closest like huge IMAX that I know of. Maybe there's one closer. I don't know.
To watch, in my opinion, the perfect movie on the perfect screen, I'll drive for that.
Yep.
There's a slogan. I'll drive for that.
I'll drive for that.
So,
I think that comes to the end of our part one, the Dark Knight trilogy. We'll pick up next week. There's a lot more to talk about in the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
There's some really good stuff about like problem of evil and good in the world, and all the other actors. There's so much to this movie, but like we said, we really wanted to harp on Heath Ledger and what he did and the Joker, because without that, this doesn't work. So we will dig in more into that and then wrap up with The Dark Knight Rises next week as well. There's plenty to talk about there also, but at not as much as The Dark Knight. It's still, when people think of Batman, they still think The Dark Knight. They think the second one. A lot like when people think original Star Wars, they think Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
That's the same level that The Dark Knight is on.
Yeah, The Dark Knight and Empire Strikes Back that's the perfect comparison, I think. But so join us next week. We'll talk more about this masterpiece and how this amazing trilogy wraps up.
Yep, and be sure you turn on notifications, subscribe, and like, and we will have more reviews. This past week, I know you guys got bombarded with a bunch of videos. I had technical issues. My apologies, but we got those out. We'll continue to have reviews for What If and a couple other movies and stuff coming out. Next week, we got Shang-Chi, so be on the lookout for that review.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's next week. We got our tickets Thursday night. We'll get you the review, hopefully shortly after, maybe Friday or whatever. We'll see. But we have that coming out for you guys, so make sure you have the notifications on for this channel so you are able to check out everything that comes out. And
Yes.
thank you guys for being with us this morning, and we'll see you soon.